John Holt was never the loud, headline-chasing type of reggae superstar. John Holt built his legacy quietly, through a voice so smooth and emotional it crossed borders without effort. For American audiences, the comparison is simple: if Motown had Smokey Robinson, reggae had John Holt. His sound felt timeless, his final years unfolded away from the spotlight, and yet his music continues to outlive the man himself. To understand how that legacy was built, we have to go back to the beginning, his early life and the career that shaped his voice. Born on July 11, 1947, in Greenwich Farm, also known as Greenwich Town, on the edge of Kingston, John Holt grew up in a humble fishing community where discipline mattered and opportunities were limited. His mother, Amy, worked as a nurse, and for a time, young John even considered a future in medicine. Music, however, kept pulling him in another direction. The rhythm of the shoreline, the rise and fall of the sea, and the quiet resilience of working families would later echo through his songwriting. Most famously in The Tide is High. By the age of 12, Holt began entering talent competitions organized by Veer Johns at Jamaican theaters, events that played a role similar to the Apollo Theater Amateur Nights in the United States. These contests were broadcast live on radio, ruthless in judgment, and unforgiving to anyone unprepared. Holt's early appearances were not triumphant. He was booed off stage more than once. But instead of retreating, he returned sharper each time. Between roughly 1959 and 1963, he won an astonishing 28 talent competitions, performing songs like Solomon Burke's Just Out of Reach. During that same period, he competed head-to-head with rising stars such as Jimmy Cliff, often matching or surpassing them. The foundation of his confidence was built there, under pressure, in public, with no margin for error. At just 16 years old, Holt made his official recording debut with his self-written single Forever I'll Stay Backed with I Cried a Tear. Released in 1963, it arrived at a moment when Jamaican music was shifting from ska toward the smoother, more emotional sound of rocksteady. That transition worked perfectly for Holt's voice, rich, controlled, and deeply expressive. By 1964, at around 17, he joined the Paragons, replacing original member Leroy Stamp. Alongside Howard Barrett and Tyrone Evans, Holt became both lead singer and primary songwriter. Under legendary producers like Coxsone Dodd at Studio One and Duke Reed at Treasure Isle, the Paragons helped define the rocksteady era. Songs such as Ali Baba, Tonight, and I See Your Face became cornerstones of Jamaican music in the mid to late 1960s. Holt's voice stood out, not loud or aggressive, but intimate and emotionally precise. As rocksteady evolved into reggae toward the end of the decade, Holt continued recording relentlessly. By the early 1970s, he was no longer just a group singer, he was one of reggae's biggest solo stars. His collaboration with producer Bunny Lee proved decisive. In 1972, Stick By Me became the best-selling Jamaican record of the year, confirming Holt's commercial power. The following year, Time Is the Master, produced by Harry Muddy, introduced orchestral arrangements recorded in London, expanding reggae's sonic boundaries. That same period produced 1000 Volts of Holt, released by Trojan Records in 1973. The album featured reggae interpretations of popular American and British songs, a concept familiar to US audiences from soul cover albums of the same era. It worked. Holt's version of Chris Christopherson's Help Me Make It Through the Night reached number 6 on the UK charts, proving his voice could cross cultures without losing authenticity. Success continued into the late 1970s and 1980s with songs like Up Park Camp, Police in Helicopter, and Fat She Fat. The politically charged Police in Helicopter, recorded with producer Henry Junjo Laws, openly criticized Jamaica's crackdown on cannabis cultivation and marked Holt's growing Rastafarian influence. His performance at the 1982 Reggae Sunsplash Festival cemented his status as a live powerhouse, and he continued touring internationally, even performing with the Royal Symphony Orchestra in the UK, a rare crossover that underscored his musical range. Long after his passing, his influence only deepened. His song Man Next Door has been covered by artists like Dennis Brown, UB40, and Horace Andy, while 1000 Volts of Holt received gold certification from the British phonographic industry in 2022, nearly 50 years after its release. By any measure, John Holt built a career defined by longevity, adaptability, and timeless sound. And with songs that continue to generate value decades later, the next question becomes unavoidable: how did that music translate into income? Stability and long-term financial reality? Income and net worth. There are no officially verified net worth figures from sources like Forbes, either during his lifetime or after his passing. Any numbers attached to his wealth are estimates at best, often speculative, and rarely reflective of how legacy artists from his era actually earned their living. Holt's most powerful financial asset was never a contract or a tour, it was songwriting. The clearest example is "The Tide is High," a song rooted in his childhood by the Jamaican shoreline that quietly became a global evergreen. When Blondie took the song to #1 in the United States in 1980, it introduced Holt's writing to an entirely new generation. Atomic Kitten repeated that success in 2002, turning the same melody into a UK pop phenomenon decades later. Each version extended the song's life, and its royalties. Those royalties continue to flow through multiple channels: publishing income, streaming platforms, radio play, and licensing. Holt's catalog has been used in films such as Speed 2, Cruise Control, Monster, and Striptease, ensuring that his music reached audiences far beyond reggae circles. In the modern era, platforms like Spotify and Apple Music provide steady, long-term revenue rather than sudden spikes, less flashy, but far more durable. Album sales formed another layer of income. While reggae rarely delivered blockbuster numbers in the US market, Holt's work proved unusually resilient overseas. Compilation albums like 1000 Volts of Holt remained in circulation for decades and achieved gold certification from the British phonographic industry in 2022, with over 100,000 copies sold, nearly 50 years after its original release. That kind of delayed recognition is rare, even by American standards. And yet, money was never the full measure of his success. Beyond royalties and sales, Holt invested something harder to quantify: time, mentorship, and commitment to community. Philanthropy. Long before foundations carried his name, he was involved in community-based efforts across Jamaica, including helping establish and support a youth center in Kingston. The focus was practical: keeping young people engaged, supported, and away from the cycles that limited opportunity. After his passing, that mindset became structured through the Volts of Holt Foundation, sometimes referred to as the Volts of Holt Foundation, created by his family to preserve and extend his values. Rather than symbolic gestures, the foundation prioritizes tangible impact. One of its core initiatives provides scholarships for innovators, including annual awards of around 100,000 Jamaican dollars to individuals pursuing creative and technical fields. The goal is continuity, turning inspiration into access. The foundation also supports community-oriented programs, partnering with local organizations to assist people with disabilities and families in need. Collaborations, such as those with Sun City Radio, have delivered support packages and resources to vulnerable households, keeping Holt's legacy grounded in everyday realities rather than headlines. Through the foundation's Hope charity, family members, most notably his grandson Bam Holt, remain actively involved, contributing donations, organizing outreach, and maintaining a visible presence in community support efforts. It's a generational approach to philanthropy, one that mirrors how Holt viewed music itself: something to be passed down, not performed once. Beyond family-led initiatives, Holt also lent his support to international organizations including UNICEF, the Red Cross, and various health and education NGOs. These connections reflected a broader worldview shaped by empathy and responsibility, extending his concern beyond Jamaica's borders. And while his public legacy is preserved through institutions and programs, the most personal part of his story remained protected, close to home. That brings us to the final chapter: his family life, privacy, and the man behind the voice. Personal life. Unlike many artists whose families became part of their public image, Holt kept his domestic world largely out of view. What we know today comes mostly from reports surrounding his death, rather than from interviews or public storytelling during his lifetime. At the time of his passing, multiple sources confirmed that Holt was the father of 12 children and 25 grandchildren. It was a large family, spread across generations, yet rarely placed under the spotlight. Holt did not market his family life, nor did he use it to shape his public persona. Instead, he allowed his music to speak, while his personal relationships stayed protected behind distance and discretion. Geographically, his life was divided. Jamaica remained his emotional and cultural anchor, his birthplace, the country that shaped his voice, and ultimately the place where he was laid to rest. His funeral was held at Holy Trinity Church in Kingston, and his burial took place at Dovecot Memorial Park in St. Catherine. Yet evidence from the BBC and Jamaican media indicates that London was where Holt lived in the years leading up to his death. Some earlier reports reference a house he owned in Miami during the 1980s and beyond. But there is no indication that it played a role in his final chapter. By 2014, London had become his base, quiet, distant, and largely removed from the reggae spotlight. That distance became visible on August 16, 2014, when Holt collapsed during a performance at the One Love Festival in London. He was later diagnosed with colon cancer, and complications from the illness are believed to have caused his death later that year. News of his passing sent shockwaves through the music world. Tributes poured in quickly, not only from fans, but from artists who understood his foundational role in shaping Jamaican music. Shaggy wrote, "We have lost a legend. A very important part of our reggae history. We will miss him." Sean Paul added, "Rip Sir John Holt. He gave his all to his culture. I respect him." Major international outlets, including the BBC, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and the Jamaica Observer, covered his death, highlighting his influence across ska, rocksteady, and reggae. He was remembered not just as a singer, but as a standard-bearer, someone whose voice helped define entire eras of sound. Holt had received numerous honors during his lifetime, including Jamaica's Order of Honor, recognizing his contribution to national culture. After his death, remembrance did not fade. Each year, tributes resurface on social media around November 11th and his birthday on July 11th. Memorial concerts organized by his family continue, often featuring relatives such as Junior and Bam Holt, ensuring that his name remains active rather than archived. John Holt's life was shaped by balance between public impact and private restraint. Between distance and devotion, his deep voice still echoes through reggae, pop, and global culture, securing his place not just as an icon of the past, but as a presence that continues to endure. Thank you for spending this time with us and for continuing to support stories that honor culture, history, and legacy. If this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps keep these voices alive for future generations.